The courtroom is filled with the usual sounds of papers shuffling and murmurs as lawyers argue their points and the judge listens carefully. The air is thick with the tension of a high-profile case that has captured the attention of everyone in the room. The judge, a woman known for her sharp mind and fair decisions, sits at the bench, her eyes scanning the room and her hands steady as she watches the proceedings unfold. Just then, the door creaks open, and a young black boy walks into the courtroom. His presence seems to stop time for a moment. People turn to look at him, some with curiosity, others with confusion. The boy stands at the back of the room, his eyes darting nervously between the judge and the people around him. He is small for his age, and his clothes seem a little too big for him, but there is something in the way he holds himself, a quiet determination, mixed with fear, that makes people pay attention. He steps forward slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. He reaches the front of the room, and without saying a word, looks up at the judge, who raises an eyebrow in surprise. She has seen many people come before her, but never a child so young. What could this boy want? What could he be doing here? Is he lost, or simply trying to get attention? She wonders, but before she can speak, the boy reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small folded piece of paper. His hands are shaking as he carefully walks up to the judge and places the note on the edge of the bench. Without looking up at her, he quickly retreats to the back of the room, standing still and waiting nervously. The judge looks down at the note, not sure what to make of this odd interruption. The room has fallen into complete silence. No one knows what to expect next. The note is small and plain, not adorned with any fancy handwriting or decorations, but there is something about it that feels important, something that tells the judge that this is no ordinary moment. She slowly picks it up and unfolds the paper, her fingers brushing over the creases as she takes in the boy's message. She can see the words written in bold, uneven letters. The handwriting is messy, almost as though the boy had rushed to write it, perhaps out of fear or urgency. She scans the note, her eyes widening as she reads each line. Her heart begins to ache as the words become clearer. The note isn't just a simple plea or request, it's something much deeper. It's a cry for help, a reflection of pain, a cry from a young soul who is struggling to be seen in a world that continuously ignores him. Each word cuts through the judge as she realizes the weight of the message she holds in her hand. The note is more than a simple piece of paper. It's the boy's voice echoing in the quiet of the courtroom, a voice that has been silenced for too long. Without hesitation, the judge sets the note down, her eyes still fixed on the boy in the back of the room, his face filled with uncertainty, yet there's a glimmer of hope in his gaze. He has dared to step forward and share his heart, and now the judge knows she cannot ignore him. She cannot simply move on with the case as if nothing has happened. There is something far more important to address. The judge stands up slowly. The room is filled with an uneasy silence as everyone waits for her next move. She looks toward the boy, who is still standing at the back of the room, his eyes wide and full of anticipation. The tension in the air is thick as the judge walks down from the bench and approaches the boy. She does not speak yet, but there is something in her presence that commands respect. The murmurs in the room grow louder as people begin to realize something unexpected is happening. She stops in front of the boy, who looks up at her now with a mixture of fear and hope. She kneels down to meet him at eye level, and for the first time in a long while the boy feels seen. His heart races as he wonders what the judge will do next. The judge looks at him with understanding, her voice soft but firm as she asks him why he gave her the note. What is it that he wants to say to her? The boy opens his mouth to speak, but no words come out. His throat tightens with emotion and his eyes well up with tears. He had never imagined that he would be here in this moment, standing in front of someone who has the power to listen to him. He had never imagined that his voice would be heard. His shoulders shake as he tries to find the right words. He finally manages to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. He tells the judge about his life, about the struggles he faces every day, about the ways he has been overlooked and ignored. He tells her about the pain he carries inside, about the way he is treated differently just because of the color of his skin, how people look at him and immediately make assumptions about who he is and what he's capable of. He tells her how he longs to be seen as an individual, not just another boy who fits into a stereotype. He speaks of the loneliness that comes from feeling invisible. He speaks of the fear that one day he will be defined by others before he even gets the chance to define himself. As he speaks, the judge listens intently. She watches the boy's face carefully. His words are simple, but they carry a depth of pain and truth that no one in the courtroom can ignore. She feels a lump in her throat as she listens to his story. The room is so quiet that it feels as though time has stopped. Everyone in the courtroom is watching this moment unfold, and no one dares to interrupt. The boy's words are reaching into the judge's heart, and she can't help but feel moved by the raw honesty in his voice. She slowly stands up and walks back toward the bench without saying a word. The boy's eyes follow her movements. He doesn't know what will happen next. He doesn't know if he will be sent back to his seat, if people will think he's being disruptive, or if anyone will understand the importance of what he's just shared with the judge. But then the judge speaks, her voice steady and clear. She tells the courtroom that this young boy has given them something far more valuable than any case or legal proceeding ever could. He has given them a glimpse into the soul of a child who has been fighting to be heard for far too long. She tells them that it is not just a law that they must follow, but their duty to see and hear those who need them most. The judge pauses and her eyes scan the room. The atmosphere is charged with emotion. The words the boy has shared are echoing in her mind, and she can feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She looks out at the faces in the courtroom. Some of the people seem uncomfortable, others are moved by the boy's honesty. She takes a deep breath and then speaks again, but this time her voice carries a new sense of authority and purpose. She tells everyone that this courtroom will not continue in the usual manner, not today. They will listen to what has been said and think deeply about the systems that allow such pain to persist in the lives of children like the boy standing in front of her. She begins to speak about the injustices that people of color face daily, how the system has failed them time and time again, and how it is not enough to simply stand by and claim that change will happen. She talks about how the courtrooms that claim to serve justice sometimes fail to see the humanity of those who are most vulnerable, and she acknowledges that she herself has been blind to these truths in the past. But this moment, she says, is a wake-up call. It is a reminder that the system is broken and that the work is not done yet. She looks directly at the boy, who is still standing nervously in the back of the room. She tells him that his courage in stepping forward today has already begun to change the world. His willingness to share his story will leave a lasting impact on the people in this room. She asks him if he understands how important his actions have been, and the boy nods, his eyes still filled with a mixture of fear and hope. The judge turns to the rest of the courtroom and asks them to reflect on their own actions, their own biases, and the ways they may have overlooked those in need of justice. She tells them that today is not about the case they came here to hear. Today is about all of them learning how to be better and how to make sure that no child ever feels as invisible as the boy has felt for so long. She asks the lawyers present to speak up about what changes they believe need to be made to ensure that children like the boy are given the same opportunities as everyone else. She asks them to think beyond the courtroom and think about the ways they can create lasting change in their communities. The silence in the room is deafening as the judge continues her plea for change. The boy watches her in awe, unsure of what to think, but feeling something stir inside of him. For the first time in his life, he feels as if he is part of something bigger, as if his voice matters in ways he never imagined before. It is not lost on him that this moment is extraordinary, and that it may be the turning point in his life. He does not yet understand fully what the room remains silent as the judge's words continue to resonate in the air. The boy still stands at the back, his heart racing, his mind swirling with a mixture of emotions. He has never imagined a moment like this in his wildest dreams, and yet here he is in the center of it all. As the judge speaks of justice and change, the other people in the room begin to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Some look down, avoiding eye contact. Others exchange glances, unsure of what to say or how to respond. The boy can feel the weight of their stares, and it makes him nervous. He never expected to be the focus of such attention, but something in him keeps him standing tall. Even as his hands tremble, he had come here to be heard, and now he was being listened to in a way he never expected. The judge's voice rings out as she calls for the room to quiet down. She reminds everyone that this is not a moment to debate or question what has been said, but a moment for reflection and growth. She asks everyone to think about their roles in creating a world where no one feels invisible where every child, no matter their background or race, can stand tall and be seen for who they truly are. She tells them that this is the beginning of a long and difficult journey, but one that must start somewhere. She then turns her attention back to the boy and her eyes soften as she speaks to him directly. She tells him that his bravery today has changed the course of this day and possibly even the course of his future. She tells him that he has already made a difference by speaking out and by demanding to be seen. She thanks him for his courage and tells him that his voice matters more than he will ever know. The boy feels a lump form in his throat, his chest tightens, and he struggles to hold back tears. No one has ever spoken to him like this before. No one has ever told him that his voice is important and that it can make a difference in the world. The judge's words are like a balm to the wounds that have been festering in his heart for years. She continues to speak to him, telling him that this moment will be one he can carry with him for the rest of his life, that he can always remember that there is power in his words, and that the world will one day understand him. The boy can hardly believe it. He feels as though he's floating on air as the judge looks at him with such kindness and respect. It is a look he has never received before, and it fills him with a sense of pride and possibility. His entire body feels lighter, as if the burden he has carried for so long has been lifted, even if just for a moment. But that moment is enough. It is enough to remind him that he matters, that his life has value, and that the world can change with enough voices like his being heard. The judge stands tall once more, and the room remains still. She has done something that most people could never even imagine. She has shifted the course of this trial into something far more profound than anyone could have foreseen. The boy looks around the room and notices the change in the atmosphere. The tension that once filled the air has dissipated. Now it is replaced with something else, something that feels like hope and possibility. And for the first time in his life, the boy feels that he can dream without limits, that the world is not a place that wants to silence him, but a place where his voice is needed and valued. The boy stands still. His heart is still racing as the judge's words linger in the air. The weight of her kindness and recognition feels heavy and surreal. He has never been treated this way before, never been seen so clearly before, and yet he cannot help but feel that something in the room has shifted. The judge's gaze now sweeps across the courtroom, her presence commanding everyone's attention. No one dares to make a sound as they absorb the gravity of the moment. There is a shift in the atmosphere as people begin to reflect on the boy's words and the judge's plea for change. The boy feels a strange mixture of pride and vulnerability. He has exposed himself in front of a room full of strangers, and yet somehow he feels stronger than he ever has before. The judge speaks again, and this time her tone is firm but compassionate. She tells the room that this moment is not to be dismissed as a mere act of emotion, but as a call to action. She speaks of the long history of systemic injustice that has been perpetuated and ignored, and how it is time to confront these truths with honesty and responsibility. She turns back to the boy and assures him that his voice has made an impact beyond the courtroom, that his courage in sharing his truth has started a ripple that could never be undone. She thanks him once more for his bravery and for reminding everyone of the importance of seeing one another fully and without bias. She urges the lawyers and everyone present to take a hard look at their own actions and to commit themselves to the work of creating a more equitable world. The boy looks up at her, his eyes wide with awe. He has never seen anyone speak with such authority or conviction before. It is as if the judge has opened up a world of possibilities he had never considered. As the judge steps back and returns to the bench, the boy can feel the eyes of the room shift toward him, some with admiration, others with confusion. But there is no judgment, no anger, only the sense that something important has happened today, and that it will not be easily forgotten. The courtroom begins to stir again, but the boy remains rooted to the spot as if the weight of the moment is still holding him in place. The judge calls for the next part of the proceedings to continue, but she is still thinking about the boy's note, the boy's words as she sits at the bench. She is not sure what the future holds for him, but she knows that today something inside of her has changed forever. She knows that this will be a story that she tells for the rest of her life, and one that she will carry with her when she makes decisions from now on. The boy is still standing in the back of the courtroom, unsure of what comes next, unsure of how his life will unfold from here. But there is a spark inside of him, a spark of possibility and hope. He is starting to believe that maybe the world does have a place for him. Maybe he will be able to carve out a space where he is seen and heard, not just in the courtroom, but in every room where people are making decisions about his future. He looks at the judge once more and sees something in her eyes that gives him strength. She has given him the courage to believe that he can make a difference, that his voice can be part of the change the world so desperately needs. The boy smiles to himself for the first time in a long while. The future feels a little brighter and a little more within his reach. As the courtroom begins to settle once more, the boy stands still, his thoughts racing, his mind still processing everything that has just happened. He never imagined that his simple act of handing over a note could cause such a ripple effect. He never imagined that his voice would be heard with the same seriousness as any adult in the room. But the judge's words and her attention to him have made him realize something deep inside, that his story, his feelings, his very existence matter in a way he never believed before. Outside the courtroom, the world might seem indifferent to him, but here in this moment with this judge and all these people around him, he understands for the first time that change is possible, and it starts with the willingness to be vulnerable, to speak truth, even when it's uncomfortable, to say things out loud that people might not want to hear. As he takes a small step forward, his legs shaking with uncertainty, he sees the judge glance at him one more time before she turns back to the rest of the court. But there is a new softness in her eyes, something that tells him that she sees him differently now, something that tells him she will carry his words with her. As she continues her work, he feels a strange warmth rising in his chest. As the judge continues to speak, she addresses the others in the room, asking them to reflect on what has just transpired, asking them to think about the systems they uphold and the ways in which they might unconsciously participate in perpetuating harm. She challenges them to become active participants in dismantling the barriers that have kept certain voices from being heard. She speaks not as a judge who holds the power in the room, but as a human being who recognizes that true justice is not just about rules and laws, it's about fairness, equality, and the recognition of the humanity of every individual in the room. The boy watches her with admiration as she lays out her vision for a future where no one is overlooked or disregarded, where every person has the opportunity to be heard no matter their race or background. He feels a renewed sense of purpose swelling inside of him, a belief that the world is not as helpless as he once thought, that there is power in standing up and demanding to be seen. It is a feeling that he holds onto tightly as the proceedings continue. But for the boy, everything has already shifted. He can no longer go back to the way things were before. He can no longer simply accept being invisible or silent. He feels a renewed strength in his chest, something that tells him his voice has value, and that there will always be people who will listen, even if it takes time for others to catch up. In the back of his mind, he begins to wonder what else he can do, how else he can help others find their own voices. He wonders if there are more moments like this waiting for him in the future, moments where his courage can inspire others to speak up, moments where people will see him for who he truly is and not who they expect him to be. He doesn't have all the answers, but as he watches the judge continue to speak, he knows that his journey is just beginning. He feels as if a door has opened for him, one he never thought would be possible, and he steps forward with a newfound sense of purpose, ready to face whatever comes next, even if it means continuing to push for his voice to be heard. The boy stands quietly, his thoughts racing as the judge continues to speak. Her words are still fresh in his mind, and every moment since he handed her the note feels surreal. He has never imagined this kind of attention before, never thought that his voice could change anything, but now he feels something different, a sense of responsibility mixed with excitement. He knows that this moment will shape the rest of his life, and he wonders what he can do with the strength he now feels. The judge looks at him one more time before turning her attention back to the courtroom. She addresses the crowd, urging them to consider the importance of empathy in the legal system, to think about how cases like the one before them are not just numbers or statistics, but real people with real stories who deserve to be understood and respected. She tells them that justice is not simply about following the letter of the law, but about seeing the human beings behind the cases and remembering that everyone has a story worth telling and worth hearing. As she speaks, the boy feels his chest swell with pride and gratitude. He never thought that he would be a part of something like this, never imagined that his life would take a turn where he could stand in a courtroom and have his voice actually matter. He wonders how many others there are like him, children who have been silenced, whose voices have been ignored, and whose stories have never been told. But he also feels a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, his courage today will be the spark for others to rise up and speak out. As the judge concludes her statement, she turns to the lawyers in the room and asks them what steps they are taking to ensure that the voices of marginalized communities are heard. She asks them how they are holding themselves accountable for the impact of their work on the lives of the people they serve. She challenges them to be better, to look beyond their own biases and see the individuals in front of them with the same respect and dignity they would want for themselves. The boy watches all of this with a mix of awe and wonder. He feels as though he is witnessing something profound and beautiful, something that could actually change the way the world works. He realizes that the judge is not just speaking for him, but for all the people who have ever been overlooked or pushed aside, for all the children who feel invisible or powerless, and for everyone who has ever felt like their story wasn't important. He feels a stirring inside of him, a desire to make sure that this moment is not forgotten, that this conversation doesn't end here. He wonders how he can help others find their voices, how he can support those who might be afraid to speak up, and how he can take this moment of change and turn it into a movement of his own. The boy feels that he has been given a great responsibility, and with that responsibility comes power. He feels the weight of the moment pressing on him, but it is not a burden, it is an invitation to rise above the limitations that have been placed on him, to take action and use his voice to help others do the same. As the proceedings continue, the boy remains in the background, watching as the judge's words reverberate throughout the room. But he no longer feels like an outsider, he feels like a part of something much bigger than himself, something that could change the world, and he is determined to do whatever he can to help make that change a reality. The boy's thoughts are still swirling in his mind as the judge concludes her words, and the room begins to quiet down. He feels both overwhelmed and emboldened by the powerful response to his note. He never expected such a moment to unfold before him. He never imagined that something as simple as his plea for attention could have such an impact. But now, as he stands there, his heart begins to settle and clarity starts to fill the space once taken up by doubt. His eyes glance around the room. The tension that once hung in the air has begun to fade. There's a shift in how the others are looking at him, no longer with curiosity or skepticism, but with respect and perhaps even admiration. He feels the weight of their gazes not as a burden but as a symbol of the change that he has ignited. The judge's final words linger in his mind as she asks everyone present to take this moment seriously, to internalize the lessons that have been presented today, and to commit themselves to a future where no one feels dismissed or invisible, where every person can walk through the doors of a courtroom or any public space and know that they are seen and heard. As the boy listens to her speech, he feels a sense of responsibility growing inside of him. He knows that this isn't just about him anymore, it's about everyone who has been made to feel less than, who has been treated as though their words and experiences don't matter. The boy knows that his life will never be the same after today. The judge has opened his eyes to a future where his voice has power and meaning, and now he feels the urgency to make sure others realize this too. He looks up at the judge once more, grateful for her validation and encouragement. His eyes are full of new hope that he will carry with him for the rest of his life. He realizes that his note to her wasn't just about seeking acknowledgement, it was about sparking a conversation, one that might just lead to bigger and deeper change that could echo beyond the walls of this courtroom and into every aspect of life outside the room. The boy is no longer just a spectator in the world of justice. He's now an active participant, and he knows that his actions today have created a path for others to follow. He wonders if this moment could be the beginning of something even greater, something that starts with him but spreads far beyond what he could ever imagine. In the days that follow, the boy's story is shared among people in the community. The judge's speech is quoted in news articles and social media posts. People talk about how a young boy's bravery and a judge's willingness to listen sparked a conversation that could change the the future of their society, and as the boy walks home from the courthouse, he feels a deep sense of pride and purpose. He may not know exactly what his next steps will be, but he knows one thing for sure: his voice is strong, his voice is important, and he will no longer be silent when the world needs to listen. He will speak, and he will stand tall because he has seen firsthand the difference it can make when someone decides to be heard. The boy smiles to himself, knowing that this is only the beginning of his journey towards becoming a voice of change and inspiration for others. He walks forward with confidence, a sense of determination in his heart, ready to face the challenges that lie ahead.